If you're struggling or looking to scale your wholesale real estate operation to 100K a month, this video is for you. In this three-part series, I'm going to show you the three most important things that help some of my clients sell to 100K per month. Those points being: one, knowing your numbers; two, your systems and your processes; three, extreme accountability. Welcome in for part 3 of my three-part series on how to scale your wholesale real estate business to 100K per month. Part 1 was knowing your numbers. Part 2 was systems and processes. And part 3, probably my favorite, accountability. Once you got your numbers down and you got your systems and process in place, it really just comes down to accountability, holding yourself accountable, holding your team accountable. I've been a part of a team of a failing operation that closed its shop. I've seen under the hood of a couple operations that had to close their shop, and it always came down to accountability. They just weren't, holding themselves to a high standard. They weren't meeting the numbers that they needed to, and then let their employees slack off and do whatever they wanted to. So jumping right into this, accountability. So how do you do this with your team? First, to begin with, you set this expectation during onboarding. Some of you people may already have an established team, so I'll talk about that in a second. But really, you want to set this standard on your onboarding of, hey, these are the numbers I'm going to expect you to hit. Do you have a problem with that? No? Okay, great. If there ever is a time that you don't hit these numbers, how do you want to be held accountable? So really setting that stage from the beginning of, all right, this is your job description. These are your responsibilities. I'm going to expect you to do this day in and day out. So having a really good onboarding process documented, specifically with the KPIs mapped out. Now, for those people that have a team, so I'll call this new members. So now for somebody established with the team, and this is a big thing too, like a lot of some of my clients, they have team members that have been with them for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. So they're like, all right, they're producing results, they're good, I love them. But when you look at their numbers, they're just not where they should be. You could tell they're, taking a couple hours off here, taking the day off here. Again, that stuff's totally fine, but we just want to make sure that they're staying on track to hit the company's goal and their goals. So the big thing with somebody established, what you're going to want to do is do an internal interview. So an internal interview is going to be this document here. So this is just an example of what this would look like. It's going to be basically a one-on-one session to kind of reestablish where everything's at, what their goals are, and ultimately, how to hold them accountable to it. So desired outcome of this meeting is to get to know each other or reestablish, understand their perspective of their position, identify opportunities that they see improvement, which empowers them, which is really good, and what resources they need to improve on. So going through this, the big thing, I'll scroll through this slowly, but the big thing I want to get to here for as far as accountability, what is their annual financial goal? This is going to be the easiest way to hold somebody accountable, is knowing what they want to make. If they say, hey, I want to make 5K a month, and their numbers are showing they're going to make 3K a month, it's easy to go talk to them and say, hey, remember when you said you want to make 5K? Ultimately, hopefully you can find like a physical thing, like not just a monetary thing. Like, I want to buy a new car next month. Hey, remember when you wanted to buy that new car? Well, you're falling behind. I want to help you get there. So how can I help you? Is there something wrong with the system? Is there something wrong with the processes? But again, the big thing is you want to know what their annual goals are so that your employees' goals and your company's goals all align. Because once, the company's goals are up here and the employees' goals are down here, there's a big disconnect right there that you have to fill. So making sure that everyone's goals are aligned from the companies and to the employees is going to be huge. Some more financial stuff, and then getting into the KPIs. So again, this is for someone who's established. You're kind of reestablishing the boundary and kind of what they're going to be accountable for. So introducing the KPIs. All right, this is where you're going to say, hey, these are the expectations for your role. Setting X appointments, giving X offers, getting X contracts, whatever it is for that role. You're going to talk about what they are, and then how you can support them to get there. The big thing is you want to get buy-in from them. So sometimes, I don't like to necessarily say, hey, these are your KPIs when I'm doing this. Usually I'll go through and talk with them and say, hey, what do you think about this? Do you think this is possible? Like, how many appointments do you think you could schedule? Because usually if someone's established, that number should be right around where it should be. So it's just making sure you get buy-in from them. So having them kind of create that is
gives them power. They're like, okay, yeah, like I said I could do that. I'm going to go do it. So once you kind of talk that, got the buyback in from them, there's a big thing in here. This right here. What's the best way to hold you accountable if you're not hitting your goals? This is just getting, again, buy-in from the employee and them usually giving you permission to reach out to them, when they don't hit it. Because usually, an A player, when someone doesn't hit their numbers, they're going to say, call me out, give me a call, shoot me a text, whatever it is. So that's what you're really doing is you're just kind of establishing that of, hey, if you don't hit your goals, I'm going to hold you accountable to what we're talking about here today. So it's letting them, open up to say, yes, hold me accountable. You can call me, you can text me, you can call me out in front of the group, however they want to be held accountable. That way, everyone gets back on the same page. So that's what I would do for somebody established is run that internal interview and just realign company goals, employee goals, KPIs, what their roles expectations are, and everything like that. Once you got buy-in from that, that's when it's going to go into the KPI stuff. The daily stuff is just tracking that. How you're going to do that is through a daily huddle. I'm going to format this all because that stuff bothers me. Formatting is important. So with the daily huddles, I like to have a daily huddle with my team. It doesn't have to be long. Quick 30 minutes every morning, where we'll pull up our KPI sheet. We'll run through the numbers. I'll go through, hey, so-and-so, how was your day yesterday? They'll tell me about their day. We'll mark it green, yellow, or red, as we talked about in the KPI video. So if you haven't watched that, go back. But this is going to be that daily checkpoint to make sure the numbers are being met. The big thing is, we want to identify trends quickly. So if we're seeing 3 red days in a row, we're going to have a conversation of, hey, what's going on? Is there a system problem, or is there something going on with your life that I should know about? Like, what's going on? We need to get back on track. Championship teams don't go 500, so if we're going, 2 and 3 on the week, 2 green, 3 red, we're failing. We're not going to make the playoffs. We're not going to give ourselves the chance to be great. So we want to make sure we mitigate that by tracking our numbers and going through that huddle daily. And with that huddle, how that typically looks, we'll go around. We'll start with good news. After that, we'll segue into our KPIs. We'll run through that really quick. Then we'll have a Q&A session, which is going to be, if there's any issues going on or whatnot. And then once we're done with that, we're going to do like a continued ed real quick. Whether that's a role play. And, these meetings are typically going to be 30 minutes, 45 minutes. So usually you're not going to be able to do like a full role play of a script. So we'll pick like a piece of the script and run through that, or we'll do a call review. We'll go to the CRM, we'll pull up a call, we'll listen as a group, and everyone will chime in and give feedback. So that way, you're holding them accountable to their numbers that you established previously, but 2, you're giving them that continued education problem to make sure they are continuously improving, which is another area I see a lot of people fail at. They just, hire somebody on, they leave them there for 2 years, and they're like, oh yeah, they're good, they're producing, but they're not, giving that continued education. For 1, to help them grow, but 2, to ultimately get better results for you and your team. So having that huddle, I'll write it out. Good news is what we're going to start with. Then we'll segue into KPIs. Then we will have our issues, and then we will go through a role play, training, call review, just anything continued ed. All right. So now that we got the boundary set with the employee, hopefully the new person, we set it right away. If it's somebody old, we reestablish what we need to do. Then we'll hold them accountable to those KPIs. What happens once somebody starts underperforming and we're seeing multiple red days in a row? That's when we're going to go to the performance plan, or also known as a PIP. So that sheet is going to look something like this. So we got a blank plan here. The big thing was with this is like, all right, this employee is failing. And, once we see a couple of red days in a row, it's not immediately, hey, performance plan, you need to do this or get out. You're going to have a couple of conversations with this person before. Hey, this trend is happening. What do we have to do? This trend is happening. What do you have to do? Once you see it for, a week or 2 in a row, that's when it's like, all right, we're going to break out this performance plan here. So we're going to list out the area of focus. Maybe this person isn't like good at giving offers on their calls or something like that. So you're going to list out what is the area of focus that they need to do right here. This is what they need to focus on. We're going to determine the desired outcome. They're supposed to have X amount of appointments over the next couple weeks, determining where they are. So we can just fill this out real quick. I'm not going to add it just because it's a template. But so we're going to determine the outcome. All right, this person, we need them to get 10 appointments scheduled. Where are they at now? They're at 3 appointments scheduled. Now you have to bridge the gap because you want them to be up here. They're down here. How do you get them from there to up here? And usually it's going to be training on yourself, from yourself to get them kind of in there. Also making sure the system's good too. So bridge the gap. What stopped them from reaching the desired outcome? Why do they think they failed at getting it? Is it, a lead quality issue? Is it, maybe they needed more training? Maybe they were hitting this roadblock and didn't know how to overcome that objection with the seller. Stuff like that. Have them speak about, what is stopping them from getting there. All right, how can you overcome the obstacle to reach your desired outcome? This is usually going to be, continued education. Maybe they have to spend 30 days, reviewing calls to, get better. That could be reviewing their calls and giving themselves kind of review, or it could also be reviewing those A players on your company. Listen to these calls and see, how things are performed differently than your calls. Then you're going to implement those actions above, again, which is kind of what I just mentioned. Listening to calls, if it's, going on YouTube University, learning something, anything that's going to help kind of bridge that gap from down here to up top, wherever you think that's going to have to be. And then putting a how and when. How are we going to do this? All right, I'm going to go watch so-and-so's videos. When am I going to do this? This is a big thing, making sure you put a when to it. When you do not establish a when for an activity to be completed, usually the timeline for that's just going to get kicked out. I don't know about you, but if you say, hey, give this to me by end of day, I'm going to have it to you by end of day. But if someone says, hey, can you give this to me when you get a chance? That might be pushed out a day or two. Establishing that when is going to be huge, which brings me to point 4, establishing a time period of when this has to become a thing. When does this have to be done? So if I want them to get to 10 appointments and I know they should be able to accomplish that in 3 weeks, I'm going to put 3 weeks. Put a specific date. Don't just say 3 weeks. Put it like an actual date. All right. November 5th is when that's going to have to be completed. Whatever it is, put an actual date. And then on that date, schedule a follow-up meeting to see if there was improvement. And that's the big thing. You want to see if there was improvement. Hopefully the whole idea of this is to kick somebody into gear. If you're getting put on a performance plan, that means you're on your last straw at the company. It's either do this and perform, or sorry, we're going to have to part ways, friends. So establishing that and then having that follow-up meeting scheduled for that day to review, hey, did we get here? And then going back and reflecting with them, like, what did you do differently to get to, hopefully that improvement of where you're at? And ultimately, again, if they're not to your standard, if they're not producing, then unfortunately it's going to be time to let them go. As long as you've done everything in your power, you've empowered them with the systems, you've empowered them with continued education to get them to your goal, and they're still not hitting it, then it's time to part ways. That's the name of the game, and that's why you always got to be hiring. So to recap, accountability, it's going to be huge. What I always like to say is, like, don't be okay with being average. I see a lot of business owners and they're just okay with being average. They're just like, all right, we've had some results. We're making money. Great. I'm cool with that. And if that's your goal, great. You can. But for the people that are struggling, don't be okay with average. What you want to do, you want to establish those KPIs with your employees, whether that's through the onboarding call or your internal interview, making sure your employees' goals, your goals, everything all aligns, and ultimately establishing those metrics and how they want to be held accountable. Once you have that all good, we're going to start tracking our numbers. What are our KPIs? What are they supposed to hit daily? Hopefully they're hitting that daily. If not, we'll have that conversation with them. And then once, you've had that conversation, you're like, all right, there's no improvement being made here, putting them on a performance plan to ultimately, hopefully kick their butt into gear to perform. If not, part ways as friends. So if you have any questions on accountability, how you should hold accountability, this is a big thing. Leadership's a huge thing. It takes a minute to learn. It's not easy. You always should be learning it. But if you have any questions, feel free to drop them below in the comments. And as always, if you wouldn't mind liking the video, it really help. Thank you.